And this is your end of day market recap for Monday, September 22nd. I think we now only have about 6 trading days left to go to September. What a month this has been. And today's price action just kind of follows what we've been seeing for the better part of this month. It just feels like, dare I say, a little bit of a melt up at this point. SPY was up 0.5% today. Q's up 0.5% today. The IWM also, which started down, like these dips keep getting bought in IWM. I think IWM on the lows was down about 6/7 of a percentage point, comes back and finishes up just that 0.6 of a percentage point. Look at the micro caps today. That's IWC if you're not familiar with that ETF. That's sometimes my little gauge of risk on, risk off for equities. That was up 1.6% today. Just a lot of momentum in this market, which continues. One thing that's sticking out like a sore thumb is what's going on in the crypto market. I'll talk a little bit about that. That was down Bitcoin was down 2.6% today, but some of the other cryptos were down a decent clip more than that. Gold continues to make new highs, up another 1.7%. I'm still holding on to my GLD and continuing to watch what's going on in the gold miners, which I believe made another new high today. GDX, which again, these things don't get that much attention, but up another 2.7% for the day. So just amazing. There was 2 stories today. In particular in the big cap names, which I will get to. Before I do that, just make sure you look over that risk disclaimer. Everything that we're going through in these videos is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. By the way, nice to be back. I'm back in my office today. So I know I haven't done one of these live streams after the close in a while. So happy to do that today. And, maybe tomorrow I'll take some ticker requests as I'm doing these live streams. But 2 big stories today. One was Apple about seeing a lot of iPhone demand. So that's pretty interesting. Like I may need to go out and upgrade my iPhone. I haven't updated in a while, but look at the volume that's coming into Apple. And this is just different. We really haven't seen this name. It's been very slow, quiet. And when I did the weekend video for members, I had a request to go over I call them the great 8 names because I include more names than everybody else. But I had a request to go over the Mag 7 names. And I think that what we continue to see with these names is that none of them are really breaking down. And there's just a lot of rotation amongst the group. It just seems like for a little bit, one will really outperform. Clearly we've seen that in Google, which has been the star out of the group, but it seems to be slowing down a little bit. I mean, it's up. Oh, I'm sorry. I forget. I've got to share the right screen here. So I'm going to stop sharing screen and I'm going to, oops, let's do this. A little rusty over here. All right, so let me bring back Apple here. So Apple up 4%. We just don't normally see Apple up 4% when it's like a non-earnings type day. But and look at as I mentioned, look at the volume that's coming through in Apple. A lot of call buying in Apple today. So I was mentioning that like Google looks like it's been on a huge run, but it looks like it's a little tired up here, which totally makes sense. And then Nvidia. And it's funny because as I went through these names for members over the weekend, I said, I wouldn't get too down on Nvidia because it's kind of faked us out before, where it looks like it's really weak and it looks like, it looks like it's breaking down. It goes below the 50-day moving average. It bounces back, but makes a lower high, and then it breaks back below the 50-day moving average. Like normally for most stocks, that's not a particular good thing, and you begin to kind of see a breakdown, but not Nvidia. It's just a different company, and it's kind of the same, very similar. Well, I don't want to say very similar, but maybe a little bit similar to what we saw back in here after a big advance. Remember, the stock went up a lot all the way down here. I'm not going to rehash all of that, but it began to do the same thing, and it made lower highs. Right, made a high here. It kind of got rejected at previous highs here. Then it made a lower high, another lower high, and then it just kept on going down. And then finally, where there was a big support level, it bounced and then it really got going again. So you have to be kind of cognizant of this name, that they are the leader in the semiconductor space. And I know everyone seems to want to look for, they say, oh, this name's up a lot. Let me try to look for other names that are going to benefit from the AI theme. So they begin to look at things like AMD. And I don't mind that. Once, AMD, I think, really did set up a nice trade, going from the lows and when that began to turn up. But notice AMD hit resistance and couldn't get through resistance. And I think that's perfect for a trade, right? Not necessarily an investment. And again, that was one hell of a trade. The stock, bottomed out, or when it started to kind of reverse higher, that was at 108. Stock went to 170. That's a wonderful trade. But do I think AMD is going to be the leader? No, I don't. Do I think that they could possibly take more market share? There could be, but you have to remember, when you're going into one of the names that you're looking for a catch up, you have to you have to think about whether they're going to be doing something more innovative than the market leader. And what is very impressive about this company, which is now right back after just one day, is right back at testing those highs. And I would watch this 182.90 level, or called 183 level. But I would watch that to see if this thing can break out to new highs. To finish my thought, they don't stand still. They continue to do new deals and new innovative products. So that's the thing. Like, so even though other companies might catch up to them a little bit and bring their technology like a level higher, it's going to be very tough to catch somebody who keeps moving forward like Nvidia does, and they keep making deals. And today they made the deal, which I thought was very unusual. Let's see if I could just bring up the headline for you as I'm going through this. But a boatload of calls going up in this name today. They invest $100 billion in OpenAI progressively. They plan to progressively invest as much as $100 billion in OpenAI as the company's partner to deploy at least 10 gigawatts of NVIDIA systems for OpenAI infrastructure. Shares of NVIDIA climb as much as 2.4. So anyway, the partnerships enable OpenAI to build and deploy 10 gigawatts of data centers. So again, it just seems like a lot. It doesn't seem like for now that this is slowing down in terms of the AI theme. Could we see a correction in A stocks? Absolutely. But to me, this was just another one of these days where it kind of just makes your head spin a little bit to think like, okay, I've got a good feel for this, and we keep seeing these news developments, which bring these things up another level. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the indices in just a second, but I like to go over like what stocks will do well when you see something like this. Now, CoreWeave did rise up and take out a VPOC up here, but so that's usually where a company kind of pauses a little bit because this is overhead supply. But I would definitely keep an eye on what CoreWeave does here, right around this 142 level. Maybe it kind of comes in and digests a little bit, but there's another VPOC up here right around 150. And I think if Nvidia continues to go, like, this is a name that might actually move up faster rather than an AMD. So this I might be more inclined to play. The power generation companies, which have been a little bit sleepy recently. I said this on Twitter last night, and I kind of was watching this name. Sorry, I'm bringing up the wrong symbol here, but I'll go through a couple of these. I said, hey, this GEV, which by the way had tremendous earnings back in here, right? They really have just gone sideways. Now, I like when stocks go after they've been on a big run, which GEV certainly has. They tend to pause a little bit and they tend to go sideways a bit, and they wait for that 50-day moving average or the 20-day, depending on how extended they are. Maybe they wait for the 20-day moving average or the 50-day moving average to catch up, and then they sometimes begin to get going again. All right, so this was a really nice day for GEV, which is up 3%. For the day, and nice separation now out of that 50-day moving average. Watch this 691 level, right? Because that's where it stalled earlier in the month, and maybe this thing could begin to push out and break out to new highs. Now, it wasn't just GEV, but GEV is my favorite in the group. VST also, notice the tight little consolidation here, right? Gets out to breaks through the top of the value area for the month, and then just kind of sits here a little bit. I like these setups as well. And I believe it got a downgrade after hours. I don't know if it's down at all. Maybe it's down a little bit, but that's fine. I don't know the reason why. I think it was Jeffries may have downgraded them, but I just think that this group, like, if Nvidia is going to push higher, I think these are the names to be looking at, right? Rather than looking at other semi names. Speaking of other semi names, today was not so nice move, by the way, in the CEG. Today was not an everything go up day. CRDO looks a little bit tired. The stock was down about 3.2%. ALAB, which I know is a fan favorite, also is now below the 5-day moving average. So I think this is actually a good thing for some of these things to consolidate. Not everyone is consolidating right now, which I'll show you a couple other ones, but at least for these names that have been on a big run, like, I actually want them to consolidate a little bit. I don't want to get them to be super, super overbought. Notice that CRDO did get to an RSI at around the 78 and is now kind of burning off those overbought levels. Now, like I said, not every name is going down. Take a look at what Western Digital is doing. And Micron is going to report, I think, after the close tomorrow, but these names are getting really, really stretched. I thought that this candle over here getting away from its 5-day moving average was extended. Notice what this did. Just kind of settled in, let the 5-day moving average catch up. That was when the stock was at 100. The stock's up to 112. STX is another one that continues to move higher. Just unbelievable, some of the price action of these things. And here's Micron. I just want to make sure that it does report. Yeah, it's Tuesday after the close. So this is going to be a very, they're going to have to put up a huge number for them to maintain this price action in all three of these stocks, because they're kind of similar type companies. But man, this is just super impressive. All right, so I mentioned RSI on a couple different things. I want to just look at the indices really quickly, and I don't want to be, for lack of a better term, like Debbie Downer with this stuff. But today starts the first Jewish holiday. Rosh Hashanah starts tonight. Right, what has worked very well traditionally, and I know there's supposed to be weaker seasonality right now. We're not getting that. I would be watching for something that happens this week that maybe turns the tide, because usually this is one of the weakest seasonal months of the year. Now, I did a poll about this, meaning sell Rosh Hashanah and buy Yom Kippur, which I believe is the 4th of October. If I'm wrong on that, you could correct me. If not, I'll figure it out tomorrow. But regardless, I did a poll over this weekend, and I said, does the market end up higher or lower from here, given where we are and seasonality, where the second half of September is supposed to be weak? 53% of the people said that the market still goes higher. And hey, as of today, they're right, because the market's higher. But notice what's happening here. Right? The RSI is getting pretty extended. Right? We're now at a 74, 75 in SPY. And if you go back to, so for singles, let me just make sure there's no confusion here. For single stocks, they could get overbought and stay overbought for a long time. In fact, sometimes you actually want that to happen, right? When a name really trends, it will get over 70 RSI and stay there. Single stocks are different than major indices. When major indices get overbought, they usually, I say usually, not 100%, but usually they don't stay way overbought for long. Take, for example, what happened back at the end of July. The RSI and the SPY got up to about a 75. And notice we had a little bit of a hiccup there, right? Burned off those levels and kind of went from there. Another situation too, again, I'm just pointing out where we've gotten overbought, really overbought before. But you go back to, this was July and August of 2024. It feels like a lot longer than that. But notice what the RSI got to, like an 80, again, which is pretty unusual. And notice what happened and once we got into August, right? Sorry, for the better part of July and into the beginning of August, we actually had just about a full-on correction here after we got really overbought. What tends to happen is when the indices get overbought, they tend to be priced for perfection, right? So eventually, like any bad news that comes into the market, the market could tend to get walloped, right? Here's also the Qs, which again are getting a little bit extended away from the 5-period moving average. They've just been trending all month long, right? And I'm not trying to call tops here. I don't do that in my trading, but I do put on hedges. And I did that towards the end of last week, but here we are, we're at a 76 RSI. So again, this is getting pretty cooked at this point. So what I try to do is make some adjustments. I took off my Tesla trade today. A little bit of a topic. I hit a target higher. And again, I'm just a little bit more in the frame of trying to take some trades off. IBM has worked really well for a trade for me. I really want to take this next target. Like I wanted to take it at 275 and then final target up here at 281. But I just think that we're getting stretched. Now, I still have IBM on here, but I'll be trimming, just trimming more and more into some things. A few other names that I wanted to go over. Oh, and one more note. Sorry, I jump around in these videos. But also the VIX. Now the VIX is not a high level, so when the VIX is around a 14, 15, 16, plus 1%, down 1%, really doesn't matter that much. But I do find it interesting that the VIX was up again today with the market higher. Usually you don't see that. And I do, you can disagree with me on this one. It's absolutely fine. But when I see the VIX go up like this, even though it's coming from a low level, it tells me that something's up in the market. And the volatility, we're moving. Usually when you see the VIX move up and we've already been on a nice run, it's usually telling you that something's not right as we go higher and the VIX is also going higher. So I would be also cognizant of that. And all of this, I could have said some of these things last week too. And this is why I don't call tops. I stayed long this market. I've made this September has been a great month for me, but you just want to be careful of that things could change very quickly. And, and that's why hence I put on some insurance policies in case of that. But if I would have said that last week and taken off trades, then I wouldn't have been earning money towards the end of last week, right? And today as well. So it's one of those things where it helps to have a hedge on so that you can continue to kind of participate with what's going on in this in this market. A couple other names. I was talking about Apple. And I don't think I went through all the analysis that I wanted to go through. Just like with Nvidia, and I talked about how there's power plays. CRWV is a name that you could kind of play in sympathy. I think there's also names for this as well. And I'll be watching Analog Devices. Now, Analog Devices doesn't get much attention. It probably gets no attention on social media. But remember, this had a really good earnings reaction. Analog Devices is normally one of those names that they may make some chips. I'll have to double check this if they still make some chips for the iPhone or if they supply chips to Apple. But regardless, I like the consolidation here. I would watch for a break higher. That would be right around like 248.50. Also, JBL reports earnings this week. Right, this is another stock, and look at what this stock did today. Right, this also was up 4%. Right, it's another stock that likes to move with Apple. So it's kind of interesting that you get stocks that some of them are favor when Apple goes up, some of them kind of favor when Nvidia goes up. Right, and there's a whole set of names that have pin action based on that. Just to go through a few other names, interesting what's been going on in the quantum names. They kind of cooled down. They were, for a second day in a row, these names were down pre-market and they came back. Now, INOQ, speaking of RSI, is pretty heavily bought here at 86. I think the CEO is on Jim Cramer's show, so maybe that's why they were buying calls in today. But RGTI is still seeing some calls as well. Note QUBT fell today because they had a secondary, right? You're seeing this in some companies where they're taking advantage of these prices and kind of cashing out a little bit. Just to go through some other names. And NBIS, nice follow through in this one, out to new highs, was up another 7% today. Very impressive. TEM kind of backed up they were up on some good news this morning. They backed up a little bit, but for now they're holding support. This has been a tricky name, but it is holding 83.60. IREN also came out with good news, also a bit extended away from its 5-day moving average, but has been a super strong name. CIFR Another one of these names had a really nice price action today and call buying. Speaking of call buying, I'm going to talk about this quantum, and it's a quantum and uranium name, which we saw big option activity. I wrote about this name in our market pulse note on Friday, right? I added along into this. It was really some unusual. I hate to use the term unusual option activity, but I don't normally see option activity in this name, and they actually, I believe, added to some of those calls today. So this worked out really well, up 13%. It blasted right through the top of its value area, and this was a nice winner for me today. Going and looking at the other uranium names really quickly. OKLO, again, dips are getting bought here. These names started down today and they went higher. LEU tacked on more gains. There's a VPOC up there that would be pretty tremendous if this thing just goes vertical and takes out that VPOC up at 337. At this point, I would want some digestion, right? And maybe put in a little bit of a bull flag, let the 5-day moving average catch up. And then I would look for this name to maybe take out that VPOC up at 337. So I covered the power names. What else did I want to cover here in this video? Just a few other of these uranium names. UEC saw some calls today, smaller cap name, but I think this is new highs for UEC. I don't see any other highs up here. So, if you're looking for one that is not that extended, maybe look at this one because this one saw a nice call buyer today. Couple names, like I mentioned, today was a day that not everything was up today. I would keep your eyes on the CLS. It's been going sideways since this gap up, so digesting. If the market still has some power to it, I think CLS will be pretty interesting. ZEPP, which is a name that I thought really set up nicely technically. And I think I went over this in Friday's video. Nice digestion here and blasted off to the upside, took out this VPOC. I added this trade on Friday, up 7% today. So again, going back to while I'm getting a little bit uneasy about this market getting overbought, there's still some good looking setups. And that's why I would keep an eye on some of those names. Also, what got going today was clean energy. Here's PBW. This is the clean energy ETF. Also, there's a international clean energy ETF, which I think looks pretty good on the weekly. Again, you might want a little bit of a check back here, but this ETF is nowhere near where this thing topped out years ago. First Solar and the solar names did well today. It's been tough to be in these names in my opinion, but First Solar has been a little bit less volatile than usual. It's just kind of tracking above this 5-period moving average. Pretty nice. I even started a trade on run on Friday and I took it off. Wish I would have kept it on, up 6% today. There was some call buying on this on Friday. And VPOC up there around 1850 and another one at 19. All right, guys. The last thing that I'll kind of note here is just what's going on with the breadth in the market too. So again, I think that we're seeing there's a decent amount of, I'm going to just replace the screen so that you can see what I'm referring to, right? That you are starting to see breadth weaken. Take a look at the new 4-week highs for both. Well, the Dow is only 30 names, but the new 4-week highs, there is 17% of the S&P made a new low today. And only 12% made a new high today. So you had 58 names that made a new high today and 86 that made a new low. Now, it's pretty diverse. I went through names, and it's something that I put on in my midday note, which you can sign up for free, and you can get this information. There's a lot of consumer staples, so again, that's kind of a risk on sign. But there's also a decent amount of consumer discretionary, industrials, and a few financials too that are making 4-week new lows. So it seems like under the hood, things are starting to weaken a little bit. Tech continues to be the leader right now. And that is also sometimes masking things. When you have Apple and Nvidia do what it did today, right, that's going to power the indices, no matter what some of the smaller names in the indices do. That's going to, as it normally does. When those names go up, right, it's going to contribute more to the to the overall performance of the market. Also, if you look at the movers today and the Qs, right, and again, you had more than Apple, and so I don't want to say it's just Apple and Nvidia, because you had plenty of names that were over 2%. You had about 14 names in the Qs that were up over 14%, but you had about 44 names today in the Qs, which were down today, which again is a bit unusual, with the Qs up about 0.6 of a percentage point for the day. Last point that I was going to go over, and I think I did say last point already, but I forgot to go over these charts, so I'm just going to go over what the and you could, this is something for you guys to ponder too. Sometimes I think that the cryptos lead moves. It's kind of a gauge of risk on or risk off. Now, we haven't broken down here yet in Bitcoin, but this has been pretty weak. And it's been now pretty weak for the better part of, I don't want to say 2 months, but we really haven't gone anywhere in 2 months. And we're below the 50-day moving average. So not a great look here. And here's the Ethereum ETF, right? And that actually broke today. It's down 7% today. Right? I would watch that 50-day moving average. And maybe this group is starting to tell us something, right? That there's a little bit of risk off going on in the cryptos. And maybe that might spread to the equity market. Again, sometimes these make the first move. So I would, bottom line here at the end of the video is that the September has been awesome. The end of last week was great trading. Today was great trading, right? But I would not overstate your welcome, considering that breadth is declining, the cryptos are moving down, and the indices are pretty cooked right now with the RSI and overbought territory. That's it for today, guys. Have a great night.